Welcome to a new episode of Business Meets Life. Hello from beautiful Australia. I thought, you know what? Why do we need to always meet in an office space? Even if we have great podcast rooms, let's change it up a little bit. And we have here amazing Anton Guinea joining us. And Anton, I actually met, he was speaking on stage at Red Bull Racing in Milton Keynes, close to London in the UK in August, I think, or September. That's where we met, although later on we also met in Australia. So Anton is actually the founder of the Guinea Group. He is a best-selling author and a globally recognized leadership speaker, trainer, and coach with a Bachelor of Psychology. With over 15 years of experience and work across 150 plus global organizations, Anton helps leaders build psychologically safe, high-performing teams. Wow, we have so much in common, Anton. I love it. He also hosts a very, very amazing Find Your Influence podcast on YouTube. Guys, follow it. Check it out. And luckily, I was allowed to be on his podcast as well and speak about leadership and influence. Anton, thank you for making time. It is Saturday, and I'd like to ask you, first of all, how are you?
Great, thanks. I'm probably a 9 out of 10 today, I think. I'm 9 out of 10. I had a semi-late night last night for me. We did a walk for Warriors because we're coming into Anzac Day, and so we did a 15K walk for our vets and just to raise some money for them, and got back a little bit late and always get up early on Saturday morning. So I'm 90% today.
Wow. This is amazing that you've done this. Actually, recently, I'm still newer to Australia. I was actually allowed to watch the preparations for the parade here in Sydney. It was in some kind of government building. So it was very interesting. I look forward to Anzac Day and to experience that. Let's start with question number one for you. You've built a very powerful LinkedIn presence in the leadership space. What's that one thing most leaders get completely wrong that's invisibly killing their reach?
Lack of content, lack of posting, lack of consistency. Leaders get sort of caught in the daily grind of delivering, but you can never, ever, ever be off social media like LinkedIn. It's got to be daily, and it's got to be probably 3 or 4 times a day. And I think, as well as that, the other mistake that some leaders make, Janine, is they buy audiences. They use bots. You can't have a crappy audience. You can't have an audience that's not authentic. We've grown organically, and I've been doing LinkedIn probably as long as anyone. As soon as it came out, I was on LinkedIn. Haven't always been consistent, but probably for 5 years I have. And we've got 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, and that's where a lot of our work comes from. Probably not sort of overtly, but quite covertly. And most people know what I do because of that. So consistency is the first thing, and grow your audience organically and authentically.
I just wrote down 3 to 4 times a day on LinkedIn. It seems like I got to double down. Once a day is not enough anymore. Anton, the pressure is rising.
And then change the content up too, Janine. Have videos, have stills, have no video or still, and just see what happens. Yeah, give it a try.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So when you interviewed me on your amazing Find Your Influence podcast, also please say hi to your amazing business manager, Debbie. Thanks for her support and the team.
Absolutely.
So we basically talked about influence being a learnable skill, not a personality trait. How has AI changed the equation for leaders trying to build that genuine influence?
I think it's changing for the positive, Janine. I spoke to a communications expert yesterday and on the podcast, and leaders are not actually born with an influence skill. So only 10% of people are born with leadership skills, and one of those skills is influence, and another one's empathy. And how do we help leaders in every way, shape, and form possible? If you can give them quickly and easily a script, if you can give them quickly and easily things that they can think about or things to work on. Some people will disagree with this, that I think AI helps leaders be better communicators, not only because it gives them a script. Here's the thing. You don't get good stuff out of AI unless you can communicate well with AI. Like, you've got to get to the point. This is my take around influence, Janine. And this, I don't know if people have thought about this yet. The more you use AI, the better you get at communicating with it. Like, we have a very, very, very structured process. Everyone in our office knows CROS, cross everything off. So what's the context? What's the outcome? What's the result? What's success look like? Now, when you're talking to AI, you've got to really be specific, or it's crap in, crap out. And I just know that I've become a better communicator, Janine, just from working with AI and learning to communicate with it. And I'd encourage all leaders, if influence is something you'd like to work on, you've got a tool now that not only you can learn to communicate with, it can interview you, Janine. Like, seriously.
I should try it out.
And, how many leaders out there, well, actually, let me go back a step and just tell you that one of our self-diagnostic tools up there on the wall, which we use regularly, is an acronym for leaders. So learn, engage, articulate, demonstrate, and then use empathy, resilience, and safety. Now, the L is for learn. Leadership is the second most important job on planet Earth, in my humble opinion, the first one being parenting. And if I asked if I had 100 leaders in the room here, and I said to them, how many leadership books have you read? How many leadership podcasts have you listened to? The number is small. There's all this information out there, but there's a lot of leaders aren't actively going out and looking for it. And so I would say read a book, read one of ours, do nice. A podcast, listen to a podcast, listen to YouTube, but use AI as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. It's funny that you just mentioned a parenting one. I was Monday night, I was having a chat with friends in the sauna. I met some amazing people here in the sauna. If you want to mingle, go to the sauna. Okay. Well, in Germany, you would be naked. Luckily, in Australia, not. So, fun fact. We were talking about all these people. I mean, you have psychology background, right? You're an expert. You really studied it. And a lot of people might even be really good leaders, and they might get leadership coaches and mentors. But actually, I realized, having worked with so many leaders myself, many of them are actually not reading any books in terms of parenting, how to be a good parent, or like how to be actually, like my friend was then saying, how to be a good friend. And she was saying like how she actually like can do better in specific kind of ways, or how to have a proper like relationship with your plus one. Now, this goes off topic. I don't know if you want to comment anything on that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've literally just finished reading a book about friendship that someone put me onto, and written by an ex-journalist. I can't remember her name, but and then up there's some parenting books. He'll Be Okay, and other parenting books that we went to when our kids were teenagers. And because I write so much, I read a lot as well. And actually, I read a great book this week for all of you listeners, Lead with Value from Bruce Cardenas. What an amazing book, Lead with Value. It's all dog-eared, and it's an easy read. I read it on the plane going down to Melbourne this week. But why don't people absorb knowledge? People say every day is a school day, or I learn something every day, and I go, do you really? Like, you learn passively. What we know is that this thing here needs to be engaged with emotion. So to lock things into the emotional part of this, which is not your frontal lobes, it's down in your limbic system, this brain. For anyone that's not watching this, that's listening, I'm just holding up a brain. This is Exhibit A. And this is our favourite tool. And talking about having teenagers, Janine, I love this. That's the teenage brain, and then they plug their frontal lobes in at about age 25. So to learn something and learn effectively, you really have to pick content and knowledge. Firstly, actively, but second, that you can really apply, that you can implement, that you can do something with. That and parenting, absolutely you can. Business, you can. Well, what about psychological safety and leadership? Great. These are not hard books. This is one of mine. They're not hard books to read, And I hear from people the same thing. I read it on a plane, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't get why people don't invest more time actively learning, picking a topic
Yeah.
and going hard on it. Go hard on it. Like I was in a session the other day, Janine, and we were doing the L out of this and learning. And someone said, well, what's your top tip for learning about a topic I want to learn about? I go, just do this. Top 10 TED Talks on. And I said, give me a word. And they just said leadership. It's like, it's that easy. So anyway.
Oh, I
so
love TED. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing this. I've just been wondering while we're talking, you have this psychology background. Have you always known since you were young, since you did the bachelor, that you wanted to go into like training, coaching, consulting, leadership, like those kind of topics like psychological safety and engagement and so on? Or is that something that has developed over time?
It's such a great question, Janine. And you said keep them to 2 to 3 minutes so we can get through more questions. And I'm trying to give you the shortened version of this. The shortened version of this was at high school. I had a conversation with the principal, and they said, "We'd like you to receive the rest of your education for the rest of grade 12 at another institution." So I got freed up from that prestigious high-level school in Brisbane, and I got sent back to the town that I was living in, which is an industrial town, which I'm sitting in now in Gladstone. And what you're doing in an industrial town is you go and get an apprenticeship. And so I did that. And I was never invested in that trade that I studied. Like it wasn't me. I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to be a journalist at school. All I ever wanted to do was write. And, I finished that apprenticeship, and because I hadn't listened and because I was unsafe, I actually had a bad workplace accident and got blown up in a switchboard and nearly killed at work. And so that was a life changer. And, some people say, are you glad that it happened because it gave you a career in speaking eventually? And I say, no, I'm not glad it happened. I wish it didn't, because I imagine how more successful maybe I could have been now without like that baggage of 10 years of post-traumatic stress, thinking about a workplace incident. But I did the psych degree later in life. I didn't do it straight out of school. I did it later in life because I needed to find out why me and other people do stupid shit, Janine. Like why I stuck a steel ruler on a switchboard and nearly killed myself at work. And so, but the other origin story is that I had really poor leadership, and those leaders that were poor were screamers and shouters and aggressive and abusive and abrupt, the 1900 leaders. And I sort of thought, actually, instead of being whinging about that and letting that affect my psychology, why don't I lean into helping other leaders be better leaders and not having the same impact that poor leaders had on me? And so I really, really in the last 20 years, it started with safety speaking, and then it became safety leadership, and now it's just leadership in general. And for 20 years, I've just been working with leaders to help them be really, and even if you changed it slightly, to help them be good humans. And that's hard at times, leaders, because leaders want to be popular, not effective, or they want to, be right all the time and or make people wrong. And there's a whole lot of leadership skills that we work on leaders with. But what shaped my journey the most, I think, was probably poor leadership. And actually the other thing that shaped my journey was that I was on a power station in Billawilla, not far from here, that blew up. Like it literally blew up, and we didn't know whether we'd be hurt, killed. Like it was a really scary time. But I watched leaders step into leading under pressure really well. And so I looked at those leaders, and that led me to a research program with Central Queensland Uni to try and understand what it was that leaders did well under pressure. How did good leaders manage crisis events? And so, there's always this psychology behind leadership. What is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the mindset.
I mean, leadership. I do a lot also in terms of like mental fitness, positive intelligence. There's a lot of psychology background in there. But I always love that you basically can look at something that happens, whether good or bad, right? You actually decide. It's a little bit like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I love how in the beginning, yeah, sure, it obviously wasn't good. It happened, like having that PTSD and these kind of things. But yeah, like now you're able to really step into your purpose, make an impact for so many organizations. The reason why I personally love working with leaders and executives, because I feel like they like it's like butterfly effect of making this kind of like impact, right? You work with this one person or maybe the whole team, and this person is going to spread it all over the organization. Tell me a bit more about your book, Speak Safe, and why
Right.
would we need to read it? What exactly is it about? Oh, you have
Well,
several books even, right?
let's start with these three. So I'm up to number 8, but here's the trilogy. These are the
Wow.
ones that I'm probably most proud of, and I better put them in order. 1, 2, 3. So you can get all these on Amazon. They're all on Audible as well. There's number 1 in the trilogy: Upgrade Your Mindset, Upskill Your Leadership, and Uplift Your Teams. And so and we've got all these in one book as well. So they're all in the Leadership Trilogy, which is that white one there. You know, that there's probably there's 20 years of thinking around those, and you know, I wrote those on LinkedIn, Janine. So if you're looking for a powerful way to use LinkedIn, I spent 2 years writing 2 articles a week, and I pulled all those articles into a book. And so the books are really easy to read because they're very, very much standalone articles. And and what we did was we jumbled them up and we put them in the right places, just so that the theme flowed with the different articles. And so they're probably the ones that I'm most proud of. But this one is the one that people get most value from, which is about psychological safety. Speak Safe, Lead with Care. And CARE stands for Communicate with Acceptance, Responsibility, and Empathy. And, you know, I think leaders need to understand that acceptance is a big part of leadership in 2026. Like, everyone's different, and that's cool. We've got different generations. We've got, you know, I spoke to a Gen Zer yesterday, and this young Gen Zer was coming through the organizational hierarchy and was able to explain what it's like to be a Gen Z now, and how Gen Xers sort of treat Gen Zers. And sometimes they've got a voice and sometimes they haven't. And but acceptance is important. So is responsibility. Leaders sort of have throwaway words. Leaders don't understand the importance. Every single word that comes out of their mouth should earn their place in a sentence, and they should understand that every word has an impact on another human. See, that's influence. Language influences us poorly or negatively. And is there an ebook available? Yeah, absolutely there is. Thank you, Mark from San Pedro. Yeah, man, Kindle, definitely. Jump on Amazon. You should be able to find it there pretty quickly and easily. And so the responsibility piece is, especially now with psych safety, every word matters. Every word matters. And we call this the ultimate coaching manual, because I think, you know, a lot of leaders haven't been coached. A lot of, you know, I work with leaders who have been leaders, and this happened this week. 3 years, didn't even know leadership training was a thing. The week before, 15 years, first leadership program ever.
Wow.
The best story I've got is 30 years and didn't want to come to our leadership training program because they thought they had it sussed after 30 years. And, you know, that's important. And then the E is empathy, which is the word of the 2020s, probably overused as a word, underutilized as a skill.
Yeah. So let me go back a little bit to the topic of psychological safety. So again, you know, I lived in China for 8.5 years. And if we look at Korean, Chinese, Japanese, a lot of like Asian cultures, right? I feel like psychological safety is not a big topic yet. We are still losing face when we see a psychologist, when we open up, talk about weaknesses. It's an old culture, right? Like, change is not so fast. I mean, although on the other hand, the Chinese are super fast in a lot of ways, right? And ruling the world now in many ways. For everybody who's listening in here, young, old, no matter which nationality, what exactly is psychological safety and why is it so important? Because I really feel like so many people would not know. Even if they hire you or us as leadership trainers, they would book other kind of trainings, but not really psychological safety.
Right. So here's the thing. In its simplest form, Janine, psych safety is a very, very simple concept. And the researcher, Amy Edmondson, let's give a massive shout out to Amy Edmondson, who did all of the early research around psych safety, studied medical teams and studied teams that were probably dysfunctional to a degree, and tried to work out why that was, but studied high impact teams, in other words, medical teams, because the impact of their work is life or death, and wanted to understand the impact of people being able to speak up, and then leaders listening. And so there's a lot of research from the medical background, doctors and nurses. How do they communicate? What's that relationship look like? So if you're going to study your team, that's a great one to study when it comes to speaking up and listening. And the way that Amy Edmondson defined, and I'll come back to Amy because I just think it's a beautiful definition, is people feeling safe to take interpersonal risk. Now, what an interpersonal risk is to put your hand up and say, I've got an idea. Put your hand up and say, hey, there's a better way to do this. Put your hand up and say, hey, can I challenge that? Now, that's very, very simply, right? But the thing about that is that a lot of people don't. A lot of people are afraid. Now, what are they afraid of? Rejection, ridicule, or resentment. Not always from their leaders, from their peers, from their team members. This is what some of the research has shown, that we care as much about what our peers think about us as we do our leaders. And so peers have this real ability to change how we feel about ourselves and how we feel about the team and if we feel safe. And so there's a message out there for team members as well as leaders. But so psych safety very simply is feeling safe to speak up. But now in Australia, 2022, 2023, it was made law. So there are things now called psychosocial hazards. Now, in the guidelines.
Wow, I didn't know. Interesting.
And I encourage everyone out there to go and have a look at the psychosocial guidelines and just Google the 14 elements. So there's 14. We are legally obliged in Australia, to follow these 14 elements of the law and create this safe place for our staff. Now, some of those are very simple. It just says support your staff members. Now, that's a bit broad, but go do the research and go and find out what it means. Self-determination and job control. Do you have input into your job? Blah, 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 blah. But they're all in there as well if you're looking for the 14 of those, but they're also on the interweb. So that's psych safety in a nutshell. Do people feel safe to speak up and do leaders and team members listen? But that's the moral side, but the legal side is the 14 elements. And are you complying with those?
Now, I would love to hear a concrete example from one of your clients, if you are allowed to share it. You don't have to name the organization's name. I mean, you've worked with more than 150 different organizations, right? Like, how has this team or this company transformed? Like the before and then also the after, once the workplace became more psychologically safe, or like any other like changes that you have worked on with them?
Oh, look, there's probably two that jump to mind, and I'll give you some stats. So we worked with I'll say a regional council. Now, that regional council got us to do leadership training and coaching with their staff, 10 leaders on a yearly basis, and that included training and coaching. First year was 13% uptake, self-reported, on their leadership skills and confidence. Next year was 17%. Next year was 28% uptake, increase, upgrade of their leadership skills. 28%, and that's a massive case study. You can see it on our testimonials and our webpage. Something we're really, really proud of. And talk about the ripple effect or the butterfly effect. You've got we've got 10 leaders out there who have increased their leadership capacity. Imagine the impact that's having on the business. And imagine that's the impact on their community. And so that's really powerful. The other story I'm going to share is 10 or more from this particular organisation. They were a department in a business. They were the maintenance department in a business. Now, we'd worked with that team for 12 to 18 months. We'd done off-sites, we'd done on-sites, we'd done coaching, one-on-one right down to team leader level, and sometimes even to sort of leading hand level. Do you know what? And this was a massive organisation, and they measured employee engagement by department. The department we worked with had the highest level of employee engagement across the whole organisation, and that was really powerful for us. But what do you see? This is what you see. You see leaders who have got coaching, who've got the ability to talk to someone external to their business, who's been doing this for a long time, and then they can go and implement that. Most organisations don't do that, and they don't give their young leaders, and I don't say young in age, I mean young in experience, young leaders the opportunity to go and grow. So we're really proud of those two case studies. They're probably our best ones and most specific.
Amazing. I definitely recommend working with the Guinea group. I mean, this is like obvious, right? Let's change
Thank
the topic a little bit. So we spoke about psychological safety, leadership, coaching, speaking up, communication, developing like leaders. What do you think? So you've basically stacked your flag now on how to use AI properly, right?
you.
And what's the single biggest leadership gap you're seeing right now that AI could actually solve? I mean, we spoke so much on why we still need the human component, why we leaders, leadership trainers are still needed, right? But if leaders would just get out of their own way also with that AI.
What's the biggest leadership gap? And just before I
Mm.
answer that, Ferenc from the Philippines said psychological safety is the most important thing over there, and it's lacking. And I think that's one of the reasons that Janine led in with the question with some of those Asian countries, and I agree, it really is lacking in a lot of sort of countries around the world. But what else is lacking leadership from an AI perspective? This is
That
what
can
I
be
think.
solved with AI.
Oh, absolutely. This is what I think, Janine, and I want to take a step back. How do we solve it with AI? But let's just go. Leaders that one don't use AI, can't talk about it, and can't explain it as a positive change. This is the biggest thing that I want leaders to be thinking about. You have to, and it comes back to how you speak, how do you language things, how you communicate. Like people are worried about AI. Leaders are worried about AI. A lot of leaders are using it, and but they're not helping their staff use it. A lot of leaders, are very basic at ChatGPT and putting all their information out into the world. Entrepreneurs are scarily putting stuff onto ChatGPT that goes out to the planet. And so I think the gap that AI can close for leaders is to actually become part of the way leaders do business and part of the way they lead. We're at the point now, Janine, where when we do workshops and we actually have AI up there and we AI stuff. Now, it comes back with quite varying responses. So you've got to still put a human element and a human hat on it. We call it AI leadership. And I think that AI itself can help leaders implement itself if leaders adopt it and train it and talk about it properly and make sure that there's no fear around it and use the right AI product. Use Core Brain, use JT1, which is a private platform, and really just implement it in your business in the right way.
Wow, so powerful. Like I just wrote down so much. I can really see you co-hosting. It's you, Anton, plus your AI, the core brain, both giving this
Absolutely.
leadership training together. I hope one
That's
day
right.
I have a chance to actually like co-host an event with you together. That would be beautiful. I think we would
Let's
have
do it.
amazing synergies.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's move on to the next one. LinkedIn is now flooded with AI generation content. It's basically everywhere nowadays. How does a leader still stand out and build real credibility when everyone is starting to sound exactly the same?
And I must admit that is a tough one. When you use AI enough, you can tell what content is AI driven, but I think you can still do good content with AI. For example, use AI to change an image or something like that. Our next book to come out, which is coming out in the next week or two, is Leaders of Influence, which is from the podcast. There's conversations from the podcast. So we've got a book with 8 authors who are podcast guests. And one of those podcast guests called What's on LinkedIn in 2026 Dross, because it's all just, she feels like it's all AI and would not let us use AI for the book. And we went, no worries. So it's all very, very manually written, which I'm really proud of. In saying that, how do leaders put content up that is that cuts through? I think it needs to be storytelling is probably my answer, and it needs to be storytelling that's focused on the reader and gives them something and helps them do something. And there's got to be some key messages. Like there's got to be a purpose to your content. So every post should have a purpose. Waiting for it to happen, says Mark. So I think leaders think deeply. you're going to have to go a little bit deeper, leaders, now, and the surface stuff doesn't cut it anymore. You're going to have to give a bit more of yourself, I think, and be a bit more authentic, and open yourself up a little bit more to the world. So I think that's probably my advice.
That's a very good point. Now, in terms of authenticity, like I'm getting like off script right now because you mentioned the parenting part earlier. How has that helped you in your own personal relationship or parenting or being a good uncle or a good son, like having all of this knowledge nowadays? Or maybe how has it not helped you? Or is there maybe even a way on how you've eventually even failed as a son, as a brother, as a dad? I don't know.
I'll tell you how I failed as a parent. I say to our boys, so we got 2 boys, 26, 27, one's a pilot. If you're in Queensland, duck up to Airlie Beach. One flies tour guide planes up over to the islands and the Whitsundays, and the other one's an IT programmer down in Brisbane. And, I apologise to them occasionally and say, I'm sorry that I didn't know then what I know now. And I say, because I was too young to have kids. We had kids at 25 and I was just a boy, and I don't think I grew up. Probably haven't still. I still feel like I'm 17 at heart. And
I mean, you look like 18.
Oh, thank you, Julian. Back at we could both be in our 20s, right? Or
21.
That's it. But yeah, I sort of look back on that, and we read the books as we were going through, because we had bouncy boys, and they were very opposite ends of the spectrum. And we read the book "He'll Be Okay." Steve Bidoff, I think I can still remember the author. I think that author might have written teenage books, but I just look back on our parenting, and we're lucky that our kids are. I think we're probably lucky. We raised them by accident into good humans, successful humans, and caring humans. And I just, like I say, what I don't think I could say one mistake. I think the mistake was, probably having kids too early, maybe. But we're glad we did, because they're gone now. But maybe not doing more learning about parenting. Like if I knew what I knew now, I'd just go and have a bookshelf like that about parenting. But that's probably the least of the mistakes that I've made in my life, because the kids have turned out well. But I do apologise occasionally, and they forgive us, which is very nice.
I would like to say here, and this is something I really appreciate about all of our conversations we always have, that you're open to show vulnerability, that other people can get inspired by your mistakes, or also of what you're doing really well, right? That's why I was so keen on having you on this podcast. Reach out to you. We both spoke about this when we met in London at Red Bull Racing. And I noted this down. I'm not a mom yet, so I'll make sure I read my parenting books before I become a mom, right? Remind me again otherwise. And again, like having interviewed so many successful people, it is interesting, like the executive leaders and entrepreneurs, they read so many books, and they take in knowledge. Like I nowadays take a lot of like training or online knowledge, and YouTube has great stuff, TEDx, of course. So it's great to see how you're like consuming one book after another. Okay.
Oh my gosh. That's my next one. Project Kind. How to be kinder.
Anyway, okay, keep us posted about that.
All right. I've only got shorts on, so I won't stand up.
Yeah. So you've interviewed hundreds of high caliber guests on your podcast. Again, guys, subscribe to Anton's podcast. Find Your Influence on YouTube. He has thousands of followers by now. You're doing really well. Subscribed, of course, as well from 2 of my YouTube channels. Now, what's the most surprising or unexpected thing a guest has said that completely rewired your thinking on, it could be on leadership or anything else?
I think, and this comes out of yesterday, would you believe, Janine? And as I shared with you, so Friday's podcast day, where I try to do between 6 and 10 podcasts for the day, just on the hour. And yesterday, this was probably 8 a.m. yesterday morning, and I was speaking to a neuroscientist or a neuropsych who developed a global framework for resilience. And resilience is one of those skills that we need, especially if we're dealing with tough leaders or tough situations or crisis events or whatever the case may be. But you don't build resilience in the moment when you have a boom event. You develop resilience before and after the event. And this person said, and I'll give him a shout out, Yuri Russo's his name. He's a beautiful human and just so well researched. But he said yesterday, and this was powerful, and I'm still processing it. He said organisations should not require high levels of resilience of their staff. And I went, that's interesting, because, the leaders shouldn't be that hard to deal with, or the culture shouldn't be that hard to deal with it. They need to be resilient to deal with it. But he said organisations should support resilience for if it ever does happen, especially crisis events, which might be unexpected. So organisations shouldn't require it, because we should be able to go to work without boom events in our life from things like poor leadership. But we should support it as organisations so that people have those skills anyway, because resilience is just a life skill. And the way that he explained it is it was well-being sustainability. And I went, holy shit.
Wow. Well-being sustainability.
I know. I've never heard that saying before, or personal sustainability but I think it was well-being sustainability, in other words, long-term. And there's 6 elements of resilience: vision, collaboration, health, tenacity, composure, and reasoning. I think I've got all 6. And so, we train that stuff. I've been trained by Yuri, and we go to organisations and do resilience as well. And it's really powerful to be able to share those skills. But organisations shouldn't require it. They should support it.
Let's stick to your podcast. So recently you put me in the hot seat, right?
Yes.
On your show, asking me questions. Yes. You never know what's popping up. Surprise. And now the tables are turned, Anton. Are you ready for the next question?
No.
What's the question you secretly wish someone would ask you that nobody ever does?
What do I do in my spare time?
Seriously? Nobody has ever asked you that?
Not in a podcast. Are you saying in this forum, like in this forum, or
in general, like
in life,
whenever you get interviewed, like,
what
do you wish I would ask you? Not anybody else.
What I wish you would ask me,
yes.
But let's not let this derail it too much. Is, Anton, tell me about triathlon, and I would I'd go on a tangent. Yesterday, I interviewed for the podcast, Janine, a Paralympic 5th place competitor, and an amazing human. She's so amazing. Kate Ness, who represented our country, stood on the start line. I've represented represented our country at national level, which is really special. And my life was complete, Janine, one day where I got a phone call, and it was to a site that was remote, and then they had a camp there, and everyone was eating too much food in the camp, apparently. And there was the person said it in a different way to that, but they wanted me to come out and talk about staying in shape and doing Ironman triathlon. And I thought, my life's complete. I get to explain what it's like to be an endurance athlete. And where I'm going to Melbourne in about a month's time, and we're going to do a podcast episode with another female endurance athlete, and we're going to wear tri-suits. We're actually going to have this like lycra on to do the podcast. So that's what I wish people would ask about triathlon, but it's not really relevant to most humans. It's just part of my identity as well.
No, but I want to hear all about, not all, we don't have enough time for that, but we want to get to know you and your identity better, right? We want to see the full picture. That's why I always love to go into people's homes and into their offices, because you get a different kind of touch of that person. I mean, I've met you in person several times, but it's still like, and that's why I love going to people's homes, especially when they have bookshelves like yours in the background. If you like, I would be standing in front of it probably forever. And just by going through the different books or the interior design of your home, it would tell so much about your habits, your personality, your hobbies, what you do in your free time, your interests, right? Those kind of things.
Can I tell you, we've got a really big bookshelf in another room, and we call it the bookshelf moment, Janine. I take leaders down and say, close your eyes, stand in front of the bookshelf, and I say, close your eyes. And they're there, and I say all these books have got energy in them, and they're all motivational, they're all self-development. And I say pick the one that talks to you, and they just reach in and grab one, and it'll be the right one because it always is. And then I say, take that away and read it. It's called the bookshelf moment. And leaders they're like, oh, this is weird. And I said, no, you'll get it once you read the book, because there'll be something in the book that talks to you that resonates for you, because that energy's just come to you. And that's a really powerful moment. So I get when you said that, you stand there and you just get absorbed in the energy of knowledge and the people that have come before us. Because writing a book, there's so much of our energy and there's so much of our soul that goes into that, and because you're a person, that comes back. So anyway.
That's why I do this with like tarot cards or motivational cards in the same kind of way, right? Because at the end, it also has a message for you. But I've never thought about this with books. And that's why I love just like having this book, touching this book, smelling the book. It's just so different than having a Kindle ebook, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, we're coming to the last questions now. I mean, you have done so much. You've even raised 2 adult children in a really in a good way. You have transformed organizations. What's next for Anton Guinea? I know you've told me, or for the Guinea Group, you've told me about the next books that's coming up. I mean, you're still so young. You nowadays even speak on global stages. What's coming up in the next 2 to 5 years?
AI probably is the biggest thing, I would say, Janine. Really leaning into the AI agency and making sure that leaders everywhere have the skills, the ability to roll AI out in their business, and just make sure that the people in their organisation aren't fearful of AI. That's really my big mission at the moment, and I really want leaders to know how to use it effectively. But also how to talk about it, how to communicate it, how to use it to become better, like interview yourself, like we talked about before. And a lot of leaders wouldn't even think of that. So I think that's professionally. On a personal level, I always say that my greatest achievement on the planet is being married for 32 years this year. And
wow.
I know, go me.
Kudos to your wife.
I know.
Hope to meet her.
I know you'd love her, Janine. She's got your personality. She's very bubbly and very, very positive and very energetic and very engaging. And she's the extrovert like I am. And so I think for me personally, professionally, it's probably an AI agency. Personally, it's just keep trying to be a good hubby and a good dad, and maintain that and have date nights regularly, and make sure Jules feels loved and make sure that she feels valued. And she's been on a 30 year. She was in the burns unit with me when I got blown up in the switchboard in our early days. I've met her at 17. Wow. Met her at 17, and I'm now obviously 53. I look 20 still, like you said. But so she's been on the journey and marrying an entrepreneur, they said, and that's a roller coaster ride. And if I ever get reincarnated as, I don't know, of something, if I get reincarnated as a person, I'm not going to marry a business owner, and it's just a roller coaster ride that Jules has been on, and so I'm really grateful for that. And so yeah, professionally, I personally just be a good hubby and a good dad and a good human. So.
Wow, beautiful. I love the sharings. I feel so good right now, having spent this amazing time with you. I hope the audience feels as amazingly inspired. I think we could see it from some of the comments that popped in here from LinkedIn and YouTube. So Anton, what are your last words to our amazing global audience, from leaders? We do have a couple of students. We have people from Asia, from the West. Like, we're super mixed. We have entrepreneurs, executives.
I think my parting words, Janine, and thank you for having me. You're an amazing host. You're an amazing human, and you'd be an amazing leadership coach. I can't wait to do a workshop with you sometime. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I appreciate you making it available on a Saturday. And I appreciate everyone. You're obviously adding heaps of value on the planet. So thank you for that, and the comments are showing that. So my final comment is, leadership is the second most important job on planet Earth. Leaders, please understand that and see it as that, and treat it like that. So your team members are going to remember you in 20 or 30 years' time. How do I know? Because people tell me. They'll remember you in 20 or 30 years' time because you've lifted them or you've lowered them. And what I want you to do is lift people up as a leader, so that if I, as we do at the start of each workshop, when I ask who was your favorite leader, I want someone to say your name, because you left them with something, you impacted them, and you left them with something they'll never forget. That's what I want to leave leaders with. Please impact, please care for, and please inspire your teams to be better versions of themselves because of how good you are as a leader.
Thank you for inspiring us on a Saturday here. Thank you for making an impact to our global audience. We have a lot of docs joining us right now, actually, too. And guys, if you love today's session, please subscribe not only to Business Meets Live, my YouTube channel, but also to the amazing podcast, Find Your Influence by Anton Guinea. Connect with him on LinkedIn, on social media. We're going to have all of these, his social media in the description later on. Happy Saturday. Also, thanks to our live audience that joined. You got a lot of hearts in the comments right now. And I look forward to our next reunion, Anton.
You're a legend. Thank you, Jeanette. Love your work.
Bye-bye.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks so much. Happy Saturday.
Thank you.